Hi, how's you are doing? This is Mug with a Dog on it, and it's my YouTube thing where I post videos of the acting exercises that I do for my own edification. So, yeah, welcome to Mug with a Dog on it. Last time on Mug with a Dog on it, oh Jesus, it's getting worse. I always buy the same brand. Why does it keep getting worse? Last time on Mug with a Dog on it, we were reading from Five Plays of the English Renaissance about The Duchess of Malfi by John Webster. And so today, what we did was we just read it 6 times and then we saw how good we were at it. And we were okay. But there's some things that stand out in my mind as being like low-key embarrassing. So I read the line immediately before the chunk of text, which we were working on. It's the only other line I read in the play, and it was, "He has amply filled his coffers. He hath amply filled his coffers." And then I just glossed that because it wasn't in line with what I had on my plan to talk about. And you shouldn't do that when you're researching a piece of text. You gotta be receptive and absorb all the information. So "he hath amply filled his coffers" means the guy's got bank, man. He's walking around with cash in his pockets. And then the whole speech afterwards, like I was saying, is about how he could have had more money if he'd been less virtuous. So there's a disconnect between the two speakers there, and that means that maybe one of them is feeling, well, that means they're like talking past each other, right? Maybe that's what it means. Or maybe they agree that he hath amply filled his coffers, but this point remains that, like, yeah, so he looks like he's got money, but think of the fortune he could have made if he wasn't such a gentle soul or something like this. So we got to find it. We got to decide in our work today how heated this conversation is going to get. It's not a decision you can make with your mind. You know what you want from the scene. You have some choices you make about how you're going to get it, and you you gotta push for those things and let the feelings come naturally. But I think the clue is that they're not super listening to each other. Okay. The other thing is I figured out what let me show you what a most valued jewel you have and a wanton humor thrown away. I mean, there's commas in there. The clues are there. In a wanton humor is not the jewel. Her wanton humor is not her jewel. That's fucking ridiculous. Her wanton humor is the the psychic state, the anxiety, the you know, whatever, the vulgar, the vulgarness in her nature that swelled up and made her throw the jewel away. The jewel is the dude, whomever this guy is that they're talking about, the he that was too honest. The he that was too honest is the jewel. So let me show you what a jewel you have in a wanton humor thrown away. Not whatever insane line reading I did 6 times in a row on Saturday. Is that the number 6? Look, so today what we're going to do is exactly the same exercise. I'm just going to read it and read it and read it and read it and read it for half an hour. Actually, I'm not going to start the clock yet. And then I'll come back and read it one more time to you guys. And again, like before, we read it 6 times, see how natural we could get it. Now we're going to read it for 30 minutes and see how natural we can get it. Sure, he was too honest. Sure, he was too honest. Pluto, the god of wealth, when sent by Jupiter to any man, goes limping to signify that a wealth that comes on God's name comes on slowly. But when he's sent on the devil's errand, he rides post and comes in scuttles. Let me show you what unvalued jewel you have in a wanton humor thrown away. An excellent courtier,
and most faithful, a soldier who thought it as beastly to know his own value too little, as devilish to acknowledge it too much. Both his virtue and his form deserved a far better fortune. His discourse rather delighted to judge itself than to show itself. His breast was filled with all perfection, yet it seemed a private whispering room. He made so little noise on't. Sure. Sure, he was too honest. Pluto, the god of riches, when sent by Jupiter to any man, goes limping to signify that a wealth that comes on God's name comes on slowly. But when he's sent on the devil's errand, he rides post and comes in by scuttles. Let me show you what a most unvalued jewel you have in a wanton humor thrown away. To bless the man shall find him, an excellent courtier, and most faithful, a soldier who thought it as beastly to know his own value too little, as devilish to acknowledge it too much. Both his virtue and form deserved a far better fortune. His discourse rather delighted to judge itself than to show itself. His breast was filled with all perfection. But it seemed a private whispering room. He made so little noise on it. So after my 30 minutes of reading it over, I've done about 5 or 6 takes. That was the 6th one of those 6. And it's getting there, but I still feel like I'm pushing it too much. So I'm going to show you that one, the good one of those that I just did, and then I'm going to try to relax for a second and show you one more. Sure, he was too honest. Pluto, the god of riches, when sent by Jupiter to any man, goes limping to signify that a wealth that comes on God's name comes on slowly. But when he's sent on the devil's errand, he rides post and comes in by scuttles. Let me show you what a most unvalued jewel you have in a wanton humor thrown away. To bless the man shall find him, an excellent courtier, and most faithful, a soldier that thought it as beastly to know his own value too little, as devilish to acknowledge it too much. Both his virtue and his form deserved a far better fortune. His discourse rather delighted to judge itself than to show itself. His breast was filled with all perfection, yet it seemed a private whispering room. He made so little noise on it. All right, so I think I'm doing a good job now of describing the honest man. What's going to make this scene really sing is to realize 2 things. First of all, not only that I'm chastising the Duchess, but also that I think I'm comparing the honest man to the Duchess. There's something about the devil's fortune, right? That it's when he's sent on the devil's errand that he rides post and comes in by scuttles. I think the message here is not just that you fucked up, but that this guy you dumped is actually too good for you, because you're the rich lady who's on the devil's errand. And every time I say, his breast was filled with all perfection, I'm saying that her breast is not. And I think I got that in the first read where I was pushing, but it still felt like pushing, like there's an awkwardness to it. So obviously this piece could be developed a little more. Anyway, thanks for coming to Dog's Mug. I guess I'm Leonard Scott Collins.